Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Serrated Cucumber and lately I've been absolutely obsessed with the game Life is Strange 2. It's a story-based game about two boys on the run from the police after a tragic event involving their father's death to police brutality. Due to the game's episodic structure, episodes are each released 2 to 3 months apart and the wait between each one is pretty unbearable. During this time, I enjoy speculating and theorising about what direction the characters will go down next, what impact our choices will have, and more importantly, what will actually happen in the next episode. I've thought about this a lot and I thought I'd share my thoughts, theories and speculations with you guys. I'm going to break these down into subcategories involving things like significant choices throughout the episode, specific characters, etc. The video will be split into 2 parts and you can expect part 2 coming out within a week of this episode. Disclaimer though, this video contains major plot spoilers for episode 1 of Life is Strange 2 and there will be references to the previous games. So I highly advise that if you haven't played it, you go and do so before you watch this video. Links to the Steam page are in the description. So without further ado, here we go. Number 1. Lila. Near the end of the episode, when our protagonist Sean is in a motel and has a place to charge his phone for the first time, we have an opportunity to call our best friend Lyla on our smartphone, which our good pal Brody, who we'll get onto later, has advised us to throw away since it's dangerous to have, you know, because the police can track our location and stuff. We're presented with the choice to either call Lyla back or not call her after reading some pretty heartbreaking texts from her expressing concern for our safety. Do you call her back and hear a familiar loving voice from home, or do you throw your phone away and ignore her, leaving her even more worried about you but severing your ties to the past? So, we're left with the question. What consequences does this choice have? Well, to make a judgment on that, I just have to quickly explain how the consequence system works in Life is Strange 2 in case you didn't know. The system for consequences in this game is a bit different than the previous games. Here, several variations of the same icon will appear after a choice to indicate who the action will come to affect. If just the larger wolf is highlighted in this diagram, the action will exclusively have an impact on Sean. If the smaller wolf is highlighted, the action will exclusively have an impact on Daniel. This applies to things such as telling Daniel there are bears and wolves in the forest, and finally, if both wolves are highlighted, this is usually a more significant choice that will affect both of the brothers. With this system in mind, we can see that when we decide to call Lyla or to not call her, only the bigger wolf will be highlighted, meaning that this action will have consequences for Sean only. Daniel is largely unaffected by this choice, so this leads me to think that, contrary to what Brody tells you, calling Lyla won't actually get you caught by the police. I do have one theory about what may happen with Lyla, and I think it's that ignoring her may lead her to question your motives. All of us have been in the situation where somebody comes online and you message them only for them to shoot straight back offline again. It can lead to anxiety and worry amongst other feelings. For Lyla, this situation is only exasperated and she may think that your motives while on the run aren't so pure. Why would Sean, her best friend, be cutting her out like that after having days of no signal? Lyla may begin to suspect that your involvement in the whole situation with Brett and the police officer might be your fault after all. She begins to question you, and perhaps by the time you get the opportunity to call her again, she's more on the side of the police than you may have thought, since she hasn't exactly seen a good side of you since you've been on the run. There's another darker theory though. Some speculate that Lyla might actually commit suicide. We know that she suffers from insomnia. It's a school night, she's awake at 1:30 AM. After a certain amount of time with no contact from her best friend, Lyla might not be able to handle it. We know from Kate Marsh that Don't Not have never strayed away from these kind of issues, though it would be quite quick for her to commit suicide so shortly after the incident, since by this point in the story it's only been 3 days. So we really don't know what direction it will take other than it likely won't lead to them getting caught. Number 2. The Stampers. Hank. Hank fucking Stamper. Everybody's favourite bigoted, arrogant, violent, racist old man. Hank Stamper, the best, most pure character Life is Strange has seen since Kate Marsh. Hank Stamper, our one saviour amongst a world of darkness in the Life is Strange universe. We first meet Hank at his family-owned gas station in South Washington, 3 days after Esteban Diaz has met his tragic end and the boys were forced to flee. Presumably, he saw Sean and Daniel at the front of the newspaper that was blatantly advertising their names and faces and tried to perform a citizen's arrest upon arriving back at the gas station. While I guess there's nothing wrong with him stopping a set of fugitives, the ham-fisted way he goes about it is completely disgusting. Mixed in with his in-your-face racism, and you've got a character that is on the same level of arsehole as Damon Merrick. After Hank knocks us out and potentially backhands Daniel, we're tied up in his back office only to escape, with Daniel unintentionally using his powers to wreck an aisle of the gas station and throwing Hank to the ground. We're then met with a choice, an opportunity of sorts. Do we, as Sean, steal over $100 of camping gear while Hank is down, or do we run away from the situation, avoiding incriminating ourselves? This is marked as a significant choice within the episode, and it will have an impact on both of the boys later down the line. The true significance we don't yet know, but we can certainly take some guesses. The first thing to consider is how we're treated by Hank. He's aggressive and threatening in nature from the moment we meet him, and this act is unbroken until Daniel uses his powers and throws Hank to the floor. In this moment, Hank is completely vulnerable, but we mustn't forget the attitude he displayed otherwise, completely aggressive. When asked about Daniel after Sean is tied up, Hank seems pretty determined to detain Daniel too, saying, "Little shit took off and I'll find him," before going off to look for the younger Diaz brother in the woods. I think either way, we haven't seen the last of Hank, since this determined nature will likely still show through after the boys have run from the gas station. He's not the type to let it go so easily. Perhaps in episode 2 we'll see something like an interview in a newspaper or on the local news about Hank and his experience with the boys. This is possibly something to look out for, since it publicises the issue even more, and the extended media coverage is more likely to get the boys recognised in later episodes. We also need to bear in mind that Hank actually got in contact with the local police over the incident, alerting them to the brothers' position. Authorities will now be aware that Sean and Daniel are on the run and headed south, regardless of your choices made in this episode. This means that the Seattle Police Department is likely to be even more suspicious of the boys than they already are, given that while the Diaz brothers technically have done nothing wrong, they're acting very suspiciously. It's actually like Hank says after he ties you up: if you're innocent, don't act guilty. This paints the boys in a pretty negative light in the eyes of the law, since there's no question on their involvement now. They're acting like they're the ones who murdered Officer Matthews, which, while a police investigation would disprove that, is still a big cause for concern from the PD, since all they heard was the fight going on and a 10-10 in progress from Matthews' dashcam recording. This means that the police are likely going to be much less forgiving and understanding towards Sean and Daniel if they're caught later down the line. Now, for the actual choice itself, I think that stealing from Hank is going to be quite a significant decision which may affect both of the boys' futures, and here's why. First of all, kicking Hank in the head and stealing from him will definitely show the authorities that Sean Diaz is a criminal. Here, Sean commits an act of violent robbery, assaulting an old man to steal over $100 worth of goods from his store, which can't look good in the eyes of the law no matter what. Whether you try and justify your actions with needing the supplies to survive, or that you're stealing from somebody who is inherently a bad person, it doesn't matter. In that moment, Sean commits a crime, and the police are surely going to look at that badly if he's ever caught. Not only that, but assaulting Hank will only enrage him more and will make him more determined to tell the police every single detail that could get you caught. His wife would likely be brought into it as a witness, CCTV footage would be shown to the police, and overall it would look terrible in the eyes of the law. Not only that, but it teaches young Daniel that stealing is okay, evidenced by the fact that if you pick this choice, Daniel will steal something from Brody towards the end of episode 1, teaching poor morals and violence. However, if Sean runs, it could show that he was being held against his will and that he's frightened. And Hank grabbing Daniel violently will show his racist, aggressive nature. Nobody on Earth will be able to explain how suddenly Daniel made the entire camping display and a grown man fall to the floor, but police may just put it down to an earthquake or something similar. There's no way to prove that Daniel used supernatural ability, just how there's no way to prove that he flipped over a car and killed a person. Science will likely explain it away with a million other theories, but no sane person would put it down to telekinesis. I think that after this, any news articles we see in episode 2 would be much more tame and frame the boys in a much more positive light, given that they actually technically haven't done anything wrong. This is also further evidenced by the fact that on the newspaper we see a header that the shooting has ignited protests throughout Seattle, showing that people do believe that an injustice was done. I suspect that in episode 2 we can expect to see more of Hank in the form of some sort of news, whether it be in a newspaper or a TV broadcast, maybe an interview that will change depending on your choices. Number 3. Brody Holloway. Our good friend Brody is pretty central to the plot in Life is Strange 2 Episode 1, and he plays a large role in Sean's emotional situation, offering him comfort when he has nobody to turn to. In that moment where Sean cries overlooking either the flourishing Arcadia Bay or the ruins of Arcadia Bay, it's the first moment he can truly express how he feels, as he's been putting up somewhat of a facade travelling with Daniel, and he's unable to grieve properly over his father. Brody offers Sean some respite, a proverbial shoulder to cry on. In this moment, Sean feels safe for the first time throughout the episode. Many have speculated that Brody might secretly have some evil intent, however, I believe that this is not the case. I really feel that Brody is telling the truth in all aspects, and that he is genuinely just a nice person who wishes to repay his debt to the world by helping 2 new travellers on the road. And here's why. Brody Holloway comes to our aid after we escape the clutches of Hank Stamper and immediately takes our word as the truth, believing that Hank genuinely went crazy and assaulted the boys. He tells Sean and Daniel to get into his car and they obliged. Might be a bit of a dangerous move on their part, but we can see how they were desperate, I guess, you know, getting into strangers' cars and stuff. Anyway, Brody then drives away before letting Sean and Daniel sleep in his car and driving them south into Oregon in a few hundred miles. This detail is quite important. You see, many have expressed their fear in Brody as a Jefferson type, somebody who we meet early on in the game, who we think can be trusted, when in actuality they're a creepy psychopath. The reason I think that this isn't the case with Brody is because in that moment when Sean and Daniel fell asleep in Brody's car, he has the opportunity to do whatever he likes with them. If he wanted to kidnap them, kill them, turn them into the police, he could have done it then and there, but he doesn't. He just keeps on driving, keeping on the promise that he'll get the boys to the motel for the night. This instantly establishes Brody as a trustworthy character within 2 scenes. For this reason, I think it's unlikely that we'll ever see any sort of evil motive from Brody's character. However, I think we definitely haven't seen the last of our favourite online travelling journalist, as several times in the scene where he drops the boys off at the Three Seals motel, he reminds them that they should contact him when they're in a safer place, and Sean even notes that he should. This makes me think that, whether physical or over a call or message, we'll see more of Brody in the future. Plus, the fan reception for Brody's character was very positive, so to not have us speak to him for at least once throughout the next 4 episodes would upset the fanbase as well as myself. I think that Don't Nod is painfully aware of this, and they'll do whatever they can to satisfy the fans' needs in terms of meeting him again. I think that when Sean and Daniel can, they'll message him on his blog, and perhaps Brody will text the boys periodically throughout the game with encouragement and advice. It's in line with his character, and it makes sense within the plot. It's unrealistic to believe that over a year the Diaz brothers wouldn't make contact with Brody again in some form, and I think that Brody could act as a sort of paternal figure to them, offering advice on the road, as he already has for them. But anyway guys, we are about 15 minutes into the recording of this video by now, and the editing will likely make it a lot longer. So I don't want to keep you guys too long, but a part 2 will be up within the next week, which will be in the description if you're watching this video then, or it will just be on my channel. Thank you for watching, I really appreciate it. I worked pretty hard on this video, and it's my first video in a while, so if you could, I'd really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you think might happen in the next few episodes, along with any topics you'd like me to cover in Life is Strange. It's greatly appreciated. I love reading your guys' comments. But anyway, for now, I will be signing off. Remember to keep your cucumbers serrated, and have a nice day, guys. See you later.